Welcome to Digestible Academia, a blue sky thinking podcast where we break down complex academic research into something a bit more digestible. Each week, we will take a topic to discuss and do a deep dive into some of the most interesting articles published on Blue Sky Thinking about that topic. We'll be discussing the findings of the research and why it's relevant to you. Today's episode is all about food. We'll cover why watching sports on TV could make you eat more, why food descriptions could change what you order at a restaurant, and why you might want to avoid popcorn when you're next at the cinema. I'm Chloe Lane, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Kerry Ruffle.
Hi.
And today we're joined by Alex Lopez, who is an account manager at Blue Sky Education.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Very happy.
Welcome, Alex.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah. Good.
How are you today?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I was ambushed with this podcast. But nonetheless, very happy to be here.
Very happy to be here.
You are a very welcome guest.
So we'll dive straight into it, shall we? So the first article that we want to discuss was about popcorn and having popcorn at the cinema and whether it'll actually improve your experience.
I'm a big fan.
So how do we feel about popcorn to start off before we get into the subject? Do we like popcorn at the cinema or?
I do. I don't like the prices.
Mm-hmm.
I am the person that goes to the cinema and I pack the snacks in advance.
Yeah.
So I take the big bag and I put the drinks in. I take a coffee as well.
Oh, do you? That's very brave.
Wow. What time are you going to the cinema?
Well, I don't really go that much anymore, but if I go of an evening, and I prefer a coffee and a snack rather than a fizzy drink.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll take a coffee and I will take some snacks, and I'm not paying the cinema prices.
No, it's like £25.
Far more than the ticket.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tend to take things, and I think, I quite like a traditional snack. So if you're at the cinema, it's got to be something like popcorn. I'm not a big fan of, you can go to the cinema and get nachos and I find that a bit odd.
Is that the tradition?
I think if you're going to watch a film, then you stick with what you should. You stick with popcorn.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what about you, Alex?
I'm not a big popcorn fan.
Controversial.
I only really like popcorn if it's like doused in butter. If more butter than popcorn, I'm down for it. Otherwise, I prefer ice cream. Like, I like having an ice cream in the cinema. I'll usually buy a tub before coming because the cinema is just too expensive, like you said. So yeah, I feel like a nice Ben and Jerry is what
I've not tried that. I might have to.
Yeah, cookie dough all the way.
Well, I don't think you'll like this first put a bit of research then, because the Rotterdam School of Management has said that the presence of food will make you enjoy an experience less, not more. Because the presence of food serves as a distraction, taking that mental focus away from the event and decreasing your enjoyment of the event as a result. And they found that the more enjoyable an experience is, the more likely it is that good food will worsen that experience. So what do we think about this? Are we sad?
So because you're no longer focusing on the cinema or on the event, it worsens the experience.
Yeah, so if you're eating popcorn, for example, you might be focused on that popcorn rather than the actual film. So you will enjoy that film less than if you had had popcorn.
Right.
I think I do understand that. And I think I agree with it as well, because I just said how much I love popcorn. And it's true, I do, that's what I want to have at the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
But it does get annoying if you're in a cinema and people around you are being really noisy.
That is true.
Yeah.
And you think it's a really crunchy snack. It's something that's, you can't eat it discreetly.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree. If you're sat there in a quiet room, you're dark, you want to focus on a film, someone's rustling around next to you, or you're rustling around yourself trying to get a handful, you can't eat it quietly.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be a distraction.
Have you eaten popcorn at a cinema recently? And do you think it has distracted from your experience?
Yeah, only a couple of nights ago, actually.
Oh, really? What were you watching?
The Substance, a film called The Substance. Shout out to The Substance. But I don't know if it distracted me other than it was just that. And you just kind of go into automatic mode with popcorn, you know what I mean? You just kind of
It's easy.
devour it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I think with that film, though, you might be better not to have the popcorn. It's quite similar. So it's a body horror if you haven't seen it.
I haven't.
I saw it the other night and it was interesting.
I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
I hadn't actually thought about other people. I just thought about what my experience with food would be in front of the film. But you're totally right. If I've got somebody next to me who's crunching away, or if I can hear, I don't know, chicken wings breaking or something, it's going to ruin my experience.
Yeah.
For me, though, I think it also really depends on what type of food. Like if I've got, I don't know, some plain popcorn, some cucumber sticks, and a bottle of water, I'm going to have a much worse time than if I've got prawns, hummus dip, and bottle of Pinot Noir. You know?
Yeah, but that's not enjoying the experience. That's enjoying the food.
Yeah,
That's exactly what it comes to, isn't it? You're distracted by the
Exactly.
food rather than by what you're witnessing, what you're sitting down to do.
Mm.
Whether that's you yourself, whether that's the people around you, like you said, food smells and noises and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. What I think is really interesting about this is the study didn't just look at the cinema.
Exactly.
I think the researchers also did a control where they looked at music events, people going to concerts.
Yeah.
And I think they did it in an art gallery as well.
Yeah,
So
they
had
did,
people
yeah.
assessing art and enjoying the experience there, and also doing some colouring in, sort of like some relaxation sort of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and how much you then enjoyed those activities either with or without a snack.
Yeah, they did music, evaluating pictures, gallery, colouring in, as you say, and like a concert. And they found the same thing applied to all those experiences.
Yeah.
But interestingly, they also found that the opposite applied. So the presence of food can boost your enjoyment of a negative experience. So I think the example they gave was waiting in a queue. So if you're waiting in a queue, what came to my mind was, you know, when the Queen died, like a few years ago, those massive queues.
That was a very big queue.
That was going on for hours. And you can imagine if you had some snacks with you, it would have improved that.
Yeah.
Probably negative experience I think they was having in the room.
So I mean, the link there is it's immersion and distraction, isn't it?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if the food is then a distraction from what you're watching, then you can't fully immerse yourself in it.
Mm.
Therefore, your enjoyment's going to be decreased because there's a little part of your brain that is then focusing on having a drink, having a snack, you know,
exactly.
trying to find your snacks, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I guess if it's something that you're not wanting to be immersed in or perhaps isn't particularly engaging, having a distraction is quite a nice way of making that experience a bit more pleasant,
Yeah.
I suppose.
So what do you think this research says about like the importance of mindfulness and being fully present when you're enjoying the experience?
I mean, that's a huge topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you could relate that out to why you have your phone on all the time.
That is so
for example. The amount of time someone sits at home and, I don't know, watches Netflix, but they've got their phone. How much are you watching it if you're then tapping away on social media or trying to do other things? I like, with a cinema, that takes you away from all of that, doesn't it?
Mhm.
The point is to immerse you in a film, to sit in a dark room, great sound, great screen.
Yeah.
Sit and watch, don't talk to anybody, So I think, being present, fully present in what you're doing is exactly what you should do to experience it and enjoy it fully.
Yeah. And I think the cinema is a really interesting way to apply this research because it's one of those only times that you're sort of sat in a room watching a film without any other distractions.
Well,
So if you're watching a film at home, you probably would look at your phone or whatever. But it's interesting that even the presence of food can distract you from that. You know, you haven't got your phone.
Yeah. So when it's a bad experience, the food makes it better, right?
Yeah, so if you're watching a terrible film,
Yeah.
it's actually a good thing to have lots of,
Yeah.
lots of food.
So what I'm hearing is you've got to risk it. You've got to risk it by just having some food. It's better to risk it with a pint of food than risk it and be a bad experience with no food.
You might be on something.
I mean,
I just like the food too much.
Yeah, I for one, I won't stop going to the cinema with snacks. I think that it's an integral part of the experience. I mean, every cinema has that concession stand. It's part of you buy your ticket before you get to the screen. You are bombarded with the popcorn, the drinks, the slushies, the pick and mix. You've got it all. You have to pass that to get in. So it is part of the experience, and I think it's how a lot of cinemas actually make 50% of their profits is by how much they're bumping up the price of popcorn and stuff. So I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Yeah.
I don't think in the face of this research there'll be a film executive saying, well, actually, we don't want snacks in these things because we want to fully focus on the film. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It also makes me think about how often in just cinemas, for example, they will do like branded food or they'll have special food that complements the film as well.
Yeah. Like the Barbie movie, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And, Marvel superhero films, they've always got like a special drink or an ice cream or a slushie. And how that's also an addition to the movie you're watching, part of the experience with people as well.
Yeah, they package it in.
Yeah,
don't they?
exactly.
So experience it in full by
Yeah.
having, like you say, the branded snacks, the certain things. And they do that. I mean, the Odeon cinemas do the thing where you purchase the ticket for the gallery where you sit in the comfy seats and you've got unlimited food, unlimited drinks, you get a wider range of stuff.
Oh, it's horrible.
So,
The other day, it sounded
So
amazing.
it's part of the experience.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
don't think it's ever going to go away. It's just, you go to the cinema, you have popcorn. It's
Have you ever been to the cinema just to eat the food and then you watch the film? Because I definitely have done that.
I mean, for me, that's something again, the prices. So the prices are sky.
This used to be when they were cheap. When you get a ticket for a fiver.
And it's interesting. I read an additional study by, I think it was Stanford School of Business and also the University of California, and they looked at how cinemas made their money and why the snacks in the cinema are so pricey.
Okay.
And it's because I think they create about 40% of their revenue from the snacks. It's not all what comes from the box office, the ticket sales and what's coming through. And they found that even on, based almost to what you were saying, on quieter weeks where there's not many people through, the sale of the food still stays really high.
Yeah.
So that link between watching a film and eating something is always going to be there. Don't think you'll ever get rid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what Sally was saying, wasn't it? You
Yeah.
watch a bad movie, you buy food to make it better.
Exactly. Yeah, it fits quite nicely.
Yeah.
If anything, I think it says that movie producers, companies, they always need to think about what kind of food they're going to complement with the film, because people are always going to eat, right? Like, you don't go to maybe an art gallery or an evening event, and you wouldn't see popcorn there. You've
No,
got
this is
food
true.
that is meant to complement the art pieces, the work.
You have the campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's maybe something that cinema should think about. How are they going to make sure the food is on the same level as the film they're presenting?
That's such a good point, Alex. Yeah.
Thank you.
Annika, so thank you so much for joining us today. So we're here to discuss your research around how food can negatively impact experiences. So throughout the podcast, we've had a little bit of a discussion about your research already, but I just wanted to know a bit about what really sparked your interest in studying how food can impact experiences, and were you surprised by the results?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about this research, which personally, of course, I find super interesting because we are surrounded by food all the time. This research really started from a practical experience that my collaborator, Emily Gabinski, and I very frequently actually have at conferences. To give you a brief glimpse of how this looks like, there are many people together at an academic conference, and we all having lunch in a big room. I guess to facilitate logistics, what the restaurants often do is they already have the dessert sit on the table together with the salad, which basically means we come in, we take a seat, and we are facing this amazing dessert from the beginning till the end. And often these desserts look amazing, chocolate cake, pastry, you name it. And Emily and I started discussing that seems very counterproductive, because every one of us could basically think of is this delicious chocolate cake, but we had to go through the salad first and then wait until people actually served the main dish. So it took quite some time. And looking at our colleagues, looking at the other attendees, we actually realized that some people actually even couldn't stop themselves from trying the dessert before they would actually make it to the salad and the main dish. And this instance very much inspired what we're actually studying. I guess we were not so surprised to see this negative effect on enjoyment in this particular instance, where we basically looked then at the enjoyment of the main dish. We were surprised by the fact that we could even find that across different experiences, right? Because our work did not only look at how does this delicious chocolate cake affect how much I like the soup or the salad, but we even generalized that to instances where people are listening to music or where people color pictures or view pictures, and you have delicious food set next to you. And I guess there we were to some extent surprised that food can be so powerful that it even decreases the enjoyment of other food unrelated experiences.
So as you say, you tested this across many different activities. And did you find there was a consistent pattern across all of these activities? Or did some experiences remain enjoyable despite the presence of food?
Yeah. So we found a consistent pattern so that the presence of delicious food decreased the enjoyment of a variety of different target experiences, right? Listening to music, viewing pictures, you name it. What I do need to say is that if an experience, a target experience, is for some people extremely engaging, so that they wouldn't even notice the food, I can imagine that this negative effect decreases, right? Think about this, that if people are so engaged in whatever they are doing that they really cannot pay attention, this effect shouldn't be there. What I also need to say, and what we show empirically, if the target experience is negative, so it's not enjoyable, right? This effect should actually reverse. So, and let me explain this a little bit because maybe it's not so counterintuitive. It's not so intuitive. If an experience is negative, being very engaged into this experience actually means that you really feel this aversive reaction. Anything like this delicious food that distracts you from this focal experience, that decreases the engagement in this negative experience, should actually be helpful. So how have we tested this? It's a very simple experiment that we ran where we simply changed what kind of pictures people looked at. People either looked at enjoyable pictures or they looked at pictures that were not enjoyable. And for those people that looked at enjoyable pictures, the food had a negative effect. It decreased the enjoyment of these nice pictures. For those people that looked at not nice pictures, that basically engaged in an experience that was not enjoyable, we saw the opposite, right? They actually reported less negative reactions when they looked at these pictures in the presence of tasty food.
When my colleagues and I were discussing this, we were talking about how the negative experiences can be improved by the presence of food, and we kind of came up with the idea of queuing, for example, maybe being improved by food. Is that an example of something that could be improved, would you say, by food?
Yes, totally. So that's really something that we were also discussing. No one likes to wait. But distracting people with the presence of food from this negative experience is definitely something that I think our research would suggest is good to do. What I'd like to point out, I think that's really important to mention, is that our research focuses on the presence of food, right? So what this means is that we studied instances in which the food is present, but people are not consuming it.
Okay.
So this situation looks different, I guess, when people actually are consuming the food. We really look at instances which happen quite often, right? Like the instance at the conference that I was telling you, where the food was there, but I knew that I was not supposed to eat it yet. At events, people are gathering, they're watching a movie, and the catering is already prepared, and people can take a glimpse and can see that there's delicious food waiting, but they're not supposed to get up and eat it until the buffet is open, right? So we are studying instances where food is present, but people are not yet consuming it. Think about, so this research was completed during COVID. And I think there are many instances that really fit, right? People were working at home. The food was sitting maybe on the kitchen counter to cool down,
Yes.
but they're not supposed to actually consume it yet, right? So these are all instances where basically our research findings apply, where you're engaging in a focal activity and the food is waiting, but you're not consuming it yet. Apply this to this negative instance of waiting. I guess waiting in the presence of this delicious food, or maybe even a billboard that shows you food, right? Where you're not having the food, but you can get distracted and you're less engaged in the instance of waiting through looking at this delicious food is something that I think could be useful and could be a
Okay.
practical application of these findings.
Yeah, so it's more about the anticipation of food though, rather than actually
Correct.
consuming it, as you say. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, because I was going to ask why the research focuses on tasty food, but I guess if there's less tasty food waiting out, you wouldn't have that anticipation, I'm guessing.
You're spot on. So,
Oh,
so
okay.
this is exactly the reasoning. Our theorizing is based on mental imagery.
Okay.
Mental imagery means that people are mentally simulating an experience,
Mhm.
and people are more likely to do that for sensory pleasurable experiences, right? Or for highly pleasurable experiences. So people will simulate mentally picture how it will be to consume this delicious chocolate cake, but they may be less likely to do that for an apple, right? And that explains why particularly the presence of hedonic tasty food is basically distracting us from what we are currently doing, and thus decreases the engagement and enjoyment of pleasurable focal tasks.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Okay, so talking about practical applications for this, how could businesses, particularly those that are running events or, providing customers with an experience, what can they do with these findings to help consumers enjoy the events more?
Yeah, so I think that one important first step is for businesses to ask themselves whether the focal experience is pleasurable or not, right?
Okay.
Related to our theorizing, the effect of the presence of food is negative if the focal experience is enjoyable. So for movie theaters, for events that involve enjoyable experiences such as listening to music, viewing art, I would advise to keep the food separate, to create situations where people first enjoy the experience and food that they may consume later is not present yet. Also think of restaurants. You sometimes have restaurants where they have actually a glass vitrine. Is that how you call it? Like you have an area where the desserts are already presented. That's not a good idea, actually. Bring them out when people have consumed the salad and their main dish, and then show them what can be waiting for them. But don't have them sit at a table where the dessert is already positioned right next to them.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about experiences and waiting being clearly one of them that are not enjoyable, the story is different. So if businesses, event managers, you name it, realize that there are experiences that are part of the overall experience that in itself will not be pleasurable, not enjoyable to consumers, it may actually be a good thing to distract people with the side of hedonic, delicious food.
Okay, so going back to that example of the cinema and consuming, popcorn being there at the cinema, you might go in, and if you're then consuming that popcorn while watching the film, that then doesn't take away from the enjoyment, or does it still take away from the enjoyment when you're actually consuming it?
Yeah, so in our studies, we focus predominantly on the presence, but not consuming it. I would say if people take the popcorn and they munch it away, that is different.
Mhm.
That is different because they actually do engage in consuming the food.
Yeah.
And we know that eating is often very mindless. So I guess that would not take away the engagement from the focal experience. However, if people get the popcorn, but then actually feel that it may be distracting to others to already consume eating it because it can be noisy and they have it sit in their hand and they tell themselves that they refrain from eating it until the break, that's not a good idea. Right.
Okay.
So if you consume during the movie, I guess that's not directly related to what we study. If you have it and I say, I'm going to get it now because in the break it will be very busy and I don't want to line up, but I'm not consuming it until the break, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and I guess if people are eating it in the cinema, the other people in the cinema might be distracted from the film because they might then be thinking about the food, right?
That could be. That's not something that we directly tested.
Okay.
Whether simply having other people engage in it could have similar effects. It could
Okay.
be. It could be.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you. So, what should customers take away from this?
Yeah, I think customers should try to create a situation in which they are not distracted by food. So I gave the example of COVID, where people did everything at the same time at home. I
Yeah.
think you want to refrain from creating a situation where you basically bake a delicious cake. You have it on the kitchen counter, you let it cool down, and you tell yourself, "But first, I'm going to continue reading my book." That I would advise consumers to be mindful of the fact that the presence of delicious food may actually decrease the enjoyment that they take from other experiences.
And I guess during COVID as well, we were all baking quite a lot generally, weren't we? So I guess a lot of people were in that situation.
The
Well, thank
banana
you.
bread baking, right?
Yeah,
So
banana bread, yeah.
bake it and keep it out of sight
Yeah.
until you're ready to consume it. I guess that would be my advice based on the research that we've done.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really, really interesting to talk to you. And what fascinating research.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great talking to you.
Okay, so the next article is about how watching sports could make you eat more. So we know there's obviously a link between exercise and eating more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should know this, Alex. You ran a marathon recently.
With you.
With me.
I would be the spectator in that scenario, snacking.
Well, yeah.
Marathons aren't for me.
Yeah, to be fair, as we were running it, you could see people like eating food.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I think I had 14 cereal bars.
That's a really serious. Wow.
Someone
That's a minute.
I think I was using the marathon more as an excuse.
I
Just
see.
the cereal bars, the chocolate pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could do that without running. I don't know how many miles it was, 26.
Now you don't even need to run it. You can just watch it.
There you go. So, yeah, new research from EM Lyon Business School found that watching sports on TV can lead to increased food consumption. So they tested this with sweets. So, well, candy, as the gets better. So 2 groups were given candy and asked to watch a video, one with people playing sports and one without them playing sports. And they found that the one where they were, so the group of people that were watching people play sports ate a lot more than the people who were watching something else.
Okay.
So that was really interesting. But they also found that men ate more than women.
Right.
And that's because, well, the researchers say that's because women tend to be more focused on their weight.
I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with that myself.
What would you think that would be then?
I mean, for me personally, I don't think that would be a consideration, but I suppose sort of more generally speaking, then perhaps, yes. But again, I think it comes down to what snacks are on offer as well. What you're snacking with. So what you typically sit down with to watch a sporting event might not necessarily be the same thing that you'd sit and watch for a film or anything else that you were doing if you're having a night in with friends. So maybe that comes into play as well.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel very validated by the study. When I was younger, I used to always be on the benches, but I always took advantage of the barbecue after. So now I know.
Now you know
It's
what.
I was actually hungry.
Well, it's not saying I'm particularly hungry, it's just that you do it, which you found to be the case. They asked the female participants to do another study where they watched, well, one group watched easy sports videos and another one watched more difficult sports videos. So still people playing sports, it's just one of them was sort of, you know, sort of light running, and then the others were watching like the Olympics. So
Yeah. Something
um,
more energetic or more demanding.
yeah. And they found that the female participants that watched the easy sports were more likely to consume more treats than they would if they were watching more difficult sports. And this is all to do with goal motivation.
Mhm.
So if people feel they're not meeting a goal, they'll push themselves harder. Then when they see progress, they tend to ease back. So watching sports can lead to a similar sense of fulfillment as these goals.
Okay.
So that's really interesting, right?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I can understand from the observer perspective. Again, it's that packaging sort of snacks in with entertainment, isn't it? If you're sat watching a sport, whether you're watching it on a TV screen or whether you're in a stadium, it's, I suppose, akin to going to see a concert or going to see a film. You're there to be entertained. And that sort of package of having food and having, you know, something that you enjoy to watch, it all comes part and parcel, right?
Yeah.
It's very rare that you go to something like that and you don't have something else going on. So I can certainly understand that if you're watching a more dramatic sports thing that's harder or sort of busier, you might then be inclined to eat more, to get more involved, to indulge more because everything's sort of at a faster pace. But I hadn't really considered it from the perspective of, like you say, you know, high impact, low impact, what you might then need, the reward aspect of it. I think psychologically it's really interesting.
Yeah, so I think I could be wrong about this, but I think the easier the sport is, so you're more likely to eat more if the sport you're watching is easier.
Yeah.
Because you kind of feel like you could do that.
And then you reward yourself for it.
Yeah, so it's it's like you're psychologically doing the sport even though you're just watching it, which is insane, right? What do we think about that? Were you surprised that, firstly, that you eat more watching sports than you do watching other activities?
Yeah, well, I think just going off what Kerry was saying, my assumption would have been that the harder sports or the sports that are more dynamic, more competitive, more adrenaline, that's the ones you'd have expected to lead to people eating more because it's that entertainment factor. But what's interesting is that this study shows it's the complete opposite, right? That because you think you can do it, you then treat yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you then put yourself almost unintentionally in the mind of the person that's completed the sport?
Yeah,
So
in a way.
You've earned your treat, you've worked hard, here's your reward.
It seems like it
Yeah.
on the research, but that's crazy to me. I don't
I mean, it's going to be the only way I engage with sport. so maybe that works for me.
I don't really watch a lot of sport, so I
No.
can't tell you firsthand whether I've experienced
No.
this, but do either of you watch a lot of sport?
Nothing physical. I like motorsport, really. So, I mean, I wonder if the same thing would apply.
Like,
I
just
don't
watch
know.
breakfast.
Yeah.
It is. It's quite sort of, it's demanding of the body, isn't it? So, but I don't know how it would apply.
Do you
that
eat
sense.
snacks while you're watching that then, for example?
Actually, not as a rule. I have a drink, but I wouldn't sit there snacking. Yeah, I don't know. But I can certainly see with a big event like the Olympics, again, it's more of an event. So, you know, when the Paris Olympics happened in the summer, I watched a lot of that. I really enjoyed it. And we did sit down of an evening and we'd have a drink and we'd have some snacks and we'd sit and watch, particularly when it was the track and field elements of it. So you're watching, the 400 meters or whatever. And I would sit and I would have a snack. So, yeah, I do. I think I do understand that mentality.
Yeah.
Although nothing on the Olympics is anything I could have ever accomplished. So perhaps, again, I'm going against the study here.
Yeah. So it could be that the sports that you consider easier in the Olympics would be the ones that you'd eat more during.
Perhaps.
Obviously, none of them are easy.
Yeah.
No, I don't think any of us will be in the Olympics anytime soon. But what about you, Alex? Do you watch much sport?
No, the only part I watched of the Olympics this year was Celine Dion. I think that says it all. No, I don't really watch sports, and it's just not something I've ever tested myself for with the food. But I guess if I was going to, I would want a snack, so maybe I would choose a sport like bowling.
But does that then tap into the RSM study about it not being as enjoyable for you? So you need the distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to be distracted, and I want the sport to become the side piece to the food.
Yeah. The food is the main event.
Exactly.
So according to the research, this can actually tell us a lot about setting exercise goals. So because the research says that if people feel they are not meeting a goal, they'll push themselves harder. But once they see progress, they tend to ease back.
Oh,
So that can tell us a lot about how we should set exercise goals. So if you start your workout, for example, with an easy exercise like walking or jogging, followed by a tougher one like sprinting or, running a longer distance, that could sort of make you more likely to achieve your goals.
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so it has some interesting implications for sure.
So starting with the more achievable elements of your work,
Yeah,
and then go on to the harder ones.
yeah.
But I'd imagine that could say for your marathon prep. So whatever you did, you didn't start out and try to run a marathon from the get go, did you? You'd have to build it up in terms of what you could do, how long you could run for, what you could. You're looking with your very wide eyes. So
I
maybe
tried
you didn't
to.
just run it, but it failed. Maybe you did just run it from.
I tried to run as far as I could and it was not far. So maybe
Well,
another way to have done
Proving
that.
our study. Yeah.
Exactly. A better way to have done that was to start with the easy exercise, right?
Yeah.
Starting with a much shorter distance or
Yeah. I mean,
running slower.
that taps into all those fitness apps like the Couch to 5K, for example. If
Exactly.
you don't start off with Run 5K, they give you weekly achievable goals for you to look at. So you run for 30 seconds, you run for a minute, you hit this distance, you hit that distance.
Yes.
And it's all step by step so you can actually get there so it's not discouraging.
Mm.
So yeah, breaking it down does make it easier.
Yeah, definitely.
But what I want to know is how you rewarded yourself after your marathon.
I ate sweets while I was running and then just ate loads. So that was
So that was your I mean, you had cereal bars by the sounds of it, but
I
afterwards.
was full.
And it's
I
finished.
can actually couldn't eat anymore.
So the medal and the achievement was the reward in
Yeah,
itself.
exactly. Well, I had a long train journey home, so
we were not okay afterwards.
I just suffered through the train. And even when I got home, I had ice cream, which seems to be a common thing with me.
I get a protein shake, didn't
I had a protein shake and ice cream.
Well, the protein shake seems more medicinal.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, but
ice cream for the treats.
with training, I think definitely one of the biggest things of like going to the gym and interval training as well is that if you're consistently achieving your goals, then you're not pushing yourself hard enough, right? And it kind of plays into this that if you're constantly doing what you're expecting to do, you then start falling back.
Mhm.
Is that right? And it's when you're setting yourself a harder target that after achieving that you can really push yourself and go the extra mile.
Yeah, so you do need both. It's
Yeah,
just it's just sort of the order that you do them in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the third article is about multisensory menus. So new research it's research from INSEAD has found that how food is described can influence how much it's enjoyed.
Okay.
So they've said that multisensory menus can encourage people to eat less and enjoy the food more. It's really interesting. So a sensory menu describes meals in a sort of qualitative way, sort of focusing on the flavour profiles and ingredients rather than the sort of number of calories and those sorts of numerical descriptions. This is called Epicurean.
Yeah.
Sorry, butchered that pronunciation, but which is based on the Greek philosopher Epicurus, who wrote that the wise person does not choose the largest portion of food, but the most pleasing, which I personally love. So to test this, the researchers gave participants one of three menus: an Epicurean labelled menu, so sensory menu focusing on the flavours, a nutrition labelled menu, which had significantly fewer calories, and a control menu where they could select how much food they wanted. They said that the customers could choose as many portions as they wanted, and they were asked to estimate a fair price for the food that they consumed. So, in summary, they found that the customers that chose from the sensory menu consumed fewer calories but estimated that the food was worth more. So contrastingly, the other ones, they ate more calories but thought it was worth less money.
Interesting.
That's really interesting. And it also supports, they looked at supermarkets in the US and France, for example. They found that products with sensory labels would tend to be packaged in smaller quantities in France, but they were no cheaper in price.
Yeah.
However, in the US, there wasn't really a difference in price, but the sensory products were more expensive. So in both cases, the sensory products were more expensive.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the way that food can be described can change, firstly, how much you consume and also how much you value it.
Yeah.
In terms of cost.
And it comes back down to experience again. Or at least that's the way I'm perceiving it. And that Epicurean way of presenting and then enjoying your food. It's not just the ingredients, it's how it's presented, how it's cooked, how it's explained.
Yes.
Say. I don't have you ever eaten in a restaurant that's branded itself as Epicurean? I've only done it once or twice, and it is an entire experience. Even things like the decor, how we were expected to dress, how the staff are presented, everything they do is set to immerse you in that experience, so that it is a full thing, like multi-sensory, like you say. Every part of you is pleased by it.
Yeah.
And you're not then when the plate arrives, you're not looking and thinking, "Oh, that's a small portion." You're thinking about how beautiful it is, how good it smells, how it feels, and you come away feeling fulfilled. I think, rather than eating is a different objective. You're not going to get full. You're not going to get the best value for money. I think you liken it to going to supermarkets and how they label things in France and in the US. I think if you're doing your weekly food shop, unless you're buying for a particular event or something, your weekly food shop, you're looking to hit a budget, get value for money, you're looking to feed a family. So you might not necessarily be looking at you can still be looking for quality of food, but you might not be going all that depth. Other things come into play. It's not just the depth of your value for money, but other things might come into play as well. So
I think there are two main ways that we can see this. We can see this in Michelin star restaurants, for example, where they give you tiny portions and they describe it in detail, don't they? And I think that makes that food seem like it has a lot more value, and obviously the presentation of it as well. But also in supermarkets, like if you compare sort of Aldi, for example, to M&S, like there's a huge difference in price, even for the most basic items. But I guess the way they're described in the packaging in M&S would make you feel like they're worth more, even if it's literally the same food.
Yeah. And I think M&S is a really good example. You think about their advertising, particularly in the UK.
Yeah.
And they had a whole advertising campaign of "This is not just food." And it described a dish in huge amounts of detail. And, they had all that slow-mo footage of, sauces being poured over dinners and things.
Yeah.
And, so that sort of taps into that as well, doesn't it? It's not just food, it's M&S, it's the higher quality. It's something you're going to enjoy more than just, like you say, if you go to an Aldi or to a budget supermarket.
Where they focus more on price and quantity in their
that constancy of valuing of food. Yeah.
Listening to you though, it did make me think of coffee shops and cafes.
Oh yeah.
I go to them a lot, and you'll always know if you're in a higher end, more luxury place, if they have different types of coffee. If they've got coffee that is more nutty, more aromatic, compared to, single origin, and they'll always describe their coffee in a way that like a simpler cafe would just say a latte, Americano. So it feeds into that idea that when we get more of a description, more of an experience, it gives us a higher sense of quality of the product.
Exactly, yeah. Do you think you'd be more likely to pick that coffee, for example, because of the description than the other coffee?
If I'm looking for a luxury coffee, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If they were the same price, would you always go for the other one?
If they were the same price, I'd go for the one that has, lovely little description by that's gonna.
What if it was slightly more expensive? Would you still go for it?
I think it would depend on how much more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not paying more than £4 for a coffee. That's ridiculous.
But it goes back to what your intentions are as the person going in. If you are on your commute and you're looking for a quick coffee or something, you might not, be tempted to spend more to get something more luxurious. However, if you're seeing it as a treat, eating out often for a lot of people, it is a treat. It's not just run of the mill. You go to have an experience, don't you? So, in a menu setting, it might work quite well, perhaps with a coffee. Like you say, you've got other things on your mind. It's the same with the supermarket, isn't it? And how you then look at purchasing your food and what your motivations are behind it. If you were going in to get something because you're going to cook a beautiful meal at home for an event, then your intentions for your shopping might be different from, say, the weekly food shop to feed your family.
Yeah, that's something you go for the good stuff.
Exactly.
So the researchers said that there were three main advantages of using these sort of sensory menus. They say it's better for people's health as it encourages people to eat more moderate portions.
Yeah.
It's better for businesses because people eat less food for the same price. And it increases the overall satisfaction because people enjoy the meal more if they've got those sort of descriptions in their mind when they're eating it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of interesting takeaways from this.
So if you were running a restaurant, you'd be wanting to make a better description on your menus because it would bring in customers, surely. Hopefully it would help with return traffic then, people that have enjoyed the experience so much they recommend it to a friend, they come back and they enjoy it more. So hopefully that would keep your business more, well, not unprofitable, but just keep it afloat to keep it going.
Yeah. And what do you think would be the wider implications for this research? I was thinking maybe it could be used for sort of combating obesity. Because if you're describing these sorts of lower fat foods in a more sort of luxurious way with those sensory terms, maybe people are more likely to go for the healthier option.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I think for me, this research and the other two that we've talked about all highlight how our experience and the way we look at food is never isolated.
Yeah.
It's never just about what's on the plate. It's about who we're with, what we're doing, what's around us. And it makes me think of, okay, well, what am I doing when I'm eating? So often I spend my time working while I'm actually eating.
Okay.
And how does that take away from my work? How does that take away from my food? With this, what are the products that I'm going for? That's what I'm thinking about now. Am I going for the products that have the better descriptions, but are less of a quantity? Or am I looking to save a few pennies and go for a less quality, but cheaper? So yeah, that's what it's got me thinking about how what we're eating, how we're eating. It's never ever isolated.
Yeah. It goes back to what you said earlier about mindfulness, I think, and how you immerse yourself in something.
Yeah.
So again, like how you said, how we engage with our food, how we engage with our meal times and what we plan to have, how we sit and enjoy a film, how we sit and enjoy a sporting event and what comes into it, and how much attention you're paying to what's going on around you and what it is you're doing at the time.
So taking on board all those studies, which of the findings do you think are most impactful or surprising out of the three that we've discussed?
I like the social aspects of the Epicurean menu and the multi-sensory menus. I think, like you say, that there could be a lot of positive wins that come from that, whether it's changing people's eating habits, making it so that there's less waste in restaurants, for example, like you say, smaller portions, people eating less. There is less, then hopefully then less waste. So from a, maybe there's only a tangible sustainability impact there, but perhaps that could be useful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really good. And I think as well, it makes me think of, there are examples like restaurants where they make you dine in the dark and things like that. So you experience the taste.
Really want to do that.
Yeah, I've never done it, but I think it sounds really fun. So I think it taps into all that stuff about how you then experience your food and how you then switch off from the world around you and focus on what you're doing and focus on what's there in front of you. To that extent, we're focused on doing this podcast and we brought in popcorn.
We did.
And we brought in snacks.
We're enjoying the experience.
We have been enjoying this experience and we have not had our popcorn and our snacks. So that shows the podcast wasn't dull.
Yeah.
We're
We're taken away from them.
Had the conversation live, we might have opened up the bags.
What about you, Alex? What do you think is most surprising out of the lessons we've discussed?
I think for me, definitely the last one, thinking about what I'm buying and how it's described to me, the experience of my purchasing of food, essentially, is definitely something I'm being more aware with going forward. With the other two, I don't know. Maybe this will actually get me to watch sport. I'll watch sport that will make me snack. And yeah.
What about you?
I think for me, the popcorn one was the most surprising. I always thought that popcorn for me enhanced an experience. Food in general enhances an experience. It's something you're socialising and you're sort of snacking on the crisps or whatever when you're chatting.
Yeah.
That always to me seems to enhance the experience, but maybe I just enjoy food. And the conversation wasn't that good after all. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do like, comment and subscribe for more. For any of the articles we discussed, you can view them on blueskythinking.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ellen.
No,
It's been a pleasure.
for having me. Hope you'll invite me back.
I'm sure.
And we'll bring snacks.
Yes.
You will actually open the snacks next time.
Well, we better tell the audience not to eat while they're listening to this podcast. We don't want to take away from the experience with that.
We should have told them that at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's too late now.
No, we didn't make any jokes digestible. I could do.
Oh, wasted.